Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to be talking about Stephen King's 1974 debut novel, Carrie. It wasn't the first novel that Stephen King had written, but it was the first one that he published, and it set the stage for everything that came after. In this video, you're going to see the points to look for when trying to identify a first US and the mythical first UK edition of the novel. One of the nicest things about the Stephen King collecting community is that it's just that, a community. And there are some people that are possessive and like to hoard things, I suppose, but mostly what you find are generous, open-hearted, passionate people who are willing to share their expertise, their knowledge. They can lend a hand, they're supportive of other people at various levels of expertise. And I have learned a lot from a lot of people over the years, and I always try to take the opportunity to share knowledge that I've gained with other people when the opportunity comes up. That's what this channel is all about. But as I'm going through doing videos about the first editions, there are some rare, extremely valuable items that I don't have in my collection, and I've been kind of worried about what to do about that. But luckily, a friend of mine and a world-class Stephen King collector extraordinaire named Noah Mitchell has agreed to help me collaborate with me and provide some information about every single thing that I lack, basically, because he's got it all. He's collected things that it never occurred to me that people could seek out and collect. And he's a font of knowledge. He's very generous with his information and with his time, and he has one of the most beautiful collections that I have yet to see in person, hopefully someday, but that I have enjoyed seeing in videos and in pictures. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Noah to talk about the first US and first UK editions of Carrie.
Okay, so today we are taking a look at Carrie, the US and UK first trade editions, and looking at the points to see whether your copy is a first printing of the first edition, first trade edition. So this is the first US edition, published by Doubleday in early 1974. The things you want to look for here are a couple of issues. Not bad. First is the price on the jacket, which, as you see, should be $5.95 with a small C above it. That C stands for Carrie. Secondly, you're going to take a peek at the copyright page, which will say first edition. If you don't see that, then you probably have a book club edition, or a much later printing. The tricky thing here, to see whether you have a first edition, is to look at page 199, and which is the last page of the book, and in the gutter of the margin, I'm going to try to not damage the book, but you see a little tiny code down there where my pinky is, which says P6, right? You should see that P6. The P stands for 1974, and the 6 stands for the 6th week of 1974. So it was the 2nd week of February when this book was published. Later printings will have a later number, meaning later in 1974. So I don't have the list in front of me, but if it said something like P20, you're looking at the 20th week of 1974. If it says R16, you're looking at 1975. R is 1975. So P6 on page 199, the price of $5.95, printed on the jacket flap, and first edition printed on the copyright page are your 3 points to check for when you are looking at a first printing of the U.S. Carrie. Next up, we have the UK first edition. This book was published by New English Library. It's the same size as the US edition. The things you want to look for here include a $2.50 UK price printed on the jacket flap, bottom of the jacket flap, which says $2.50 in UK only. The copyright page will say first NEL hardcover edition 1974 and will not indicate a later printing in any way. All right, so that's what the copyright page looks like. The book itself has a purple cloth binding with gold foil stamping. I believe that was not changed, and I'm not sure if this one ever had a subsequent printing. If it did, I'm unaware of it. So if you have this one, it's probably a first printing, but so fewer salient points with this one. But again, you want to look for that price on the jacket and the copyright page saying first published by NEL in 1974 with no subsequent statement of printings. So there you have Carrie, Stephen King's first book.
Well, there you have it. Straight from Noah Mitchell. Not only a gentleman, but a King scholar with a great taste in music and an amazing collection of t-shirts to go along with it. So that officially ends the educational portion of this video, and because it's my video, I'm going to tell a few personal stories about my Stephen King journey, which really, in a lot of ways, started with Carrie. I recognized Stephen King because my grandma was a big fan and read his stuff and had some of his stuff in her personal, very small book collection that she had in her house. But really, my Stephen King journey starts with the 1976 movie adaptation of Carrie. We had a video store, legendary, at least in my memory, epic video store in my hometown, and the family would go there regularly and rent tapes and watch them and rewatch them and watch them again. And I was given free rein to browse the entire store, and I became very familiar with the comedies, dramas, foreign films, the horror titles, many of which had very eye-catching box artwork, which is kind of the point when you're trying to market an item. You make it eye-catching. And one particular thing that really stood out to me was a white video box, magnetic video. I think it came out in the very early 80s, around the dawn of the VHS, VCR era, and it replicated the movie poster for Carrie. So it's two images, one on either side, and one side is Carrie looking resplendent, beautiful, and very happy at the prom. And right next to it is Carrie, covered in blood, bathed in red light, and something about that split scene image. You know, what the heck happened to this girl, and what the heck was she going to do about it? And that image above everything else in the store, mostly, haunted me and haunted my dreams. And I asked my mom about it, and she had seen the movie when it first came out, which would have put her around 12 years old probably. And I asked her so many questions about it. I pestered her about it. I begged to watch it, that she finally relented. And her and me and my dad watched the movie one evening. I was probably around 6 years old or so. I think 6 or 7, first or second grade, something like that. Maybe that seems about right. I don't remember exactly. But if you've seen the movie, you know that it's about 2/3 build up and 1/3 payoff. 2/3 of really heavy kind of melodrama and building tension and suspense. And then suddenly at the prom, everything changes, everything flips, and then everything goes to hell after that. And I remember feeling very brave and proud of myself because I made it through that first part, the first hour or so, thinking, this isn't even that scary. And then even though I was at a tender young age, I was very familiar with bullying. I had seen bullying. I had been bullied at school. And there's something about the bullying that happens at the heart of the story that really got to me. And then Carrie's reaction to the bullying, which was so over the top. And that got to me too. And there's a few images that I'll never forget. But the movie scared the hell out of me and gave me some bad dreams, freaked me out for a few years, several years, until I picked up a copy of the book and I read it. And I read it again. I read it again. I went back and rewatched the movie. I watched it with all the lights on, alone in my room with jazz music playing in the background. I was about 12, probably, and overcame my fear by just becoming so familiar with the story, so familiar with the movie, that I would get inside of it. And I have spent a lot of time, it seems weird for a young man from the Midwest to having spent so much time sort of inhabiting the world and the story of this teenage outcast, loner, misfit girl. But I've always related to Carrie, and there's just something about the story where she's very clearly the victim, and then she flips so completely that she becomes the villain, and there are no clear answers, and really nobody wins, nobody comes out on top. And that really blew my mind when I was young, and the stories I was most familiar with had a clear good guy, clear bad guy, and in Carrie, that's just not the case. So I've thought a lot about Carrie, and for a long time, like well into my 30s probably, it was unequivocally my favorite Stephen King novel. It is the most personal Stephen King novel, even still to me, but it's no longer my favorite. I've grown up a lot, and I've read almost everything else he's done, and have moved on. Although the emotional attachment I feel to the novel still definitely places it in my top 10. And as far as being the thing that, you know, Stephen King initially threw the pages in the trash, and his wife fished them out and encouraged him to keep going, and he said that he didn't really enjoy writing it, but it was the thing that was it wasn't his big break necessarily. I mean, it was a break, and it got things going. Then the movie version of Carrie, I think, is what really made Stephen King a household name, and the paperback sales were tremendous, and it just created this whole snowballing thing until now he's one of the most famous authors in the world, if not the most famous living author in the world. I've read a lot. There's a lot of interviews. There's a lot of essays about how he sold the story and what it meant to him as a writer, when he received the national honor for contribution to letters in 2003. He talked a lot about those early years and about his wife and about the impact that selling Carrie had on the family. And it's a tremendous thing. It was not the first novel that he wrote. It was, I think, the 5th or 6th novel that he had actually completed, and it was the first one that he published, and that's all that matters. It's brief. It's a great place to start for somebody who is unsure about Stephen King, especially feels overwhelmed, as I did when I was a kid, about the idea of picking up a 600, 700, 800, 1100 page behemoth of a novel. It's a relatively quick read, and it's very vivid, and it's very visceral. Stephen King's style now, I think that he continues to get better as he has gone along. And Carrie was published almost 50 years ago. In fact, it'll be 50 years next year. And reading it now, it almost seems like Juvenilia. It came out when he was in his early 20s, just compared to his style now, which is so refined and so accomplished and so smooth. There's something angry and kind of buzzy about it. It's always been fascinating to me and exhilarating to me to read it, because when he wrote it, he was a high school teacher, so he was in that world. Not only had he only recently graduated from high school himself and gone to college, he was living and working in that world day to day. So it feels very immediate. It feels very near to where he was at that time in his life. And yeah, I think he's gone on to write many better things, but there's no denying the absolute cornerstone value and impact that Carrie has to the Stephen King universe. It doesn't necessarily tie in to everything else the way a lot of his novels are interconnected and have places and things that are sort of related. I don't know that Chamberlain, the town that the fictional town in Maine where Carrie is set, has ever appeared or been mentioned in any other Stephen King work, but that's okay. There's not a whole lot left to talk about regarding Chamberlain after the end of the novel. If you've read the novel, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it's hard for me to be objective about Carrie. I see the faults in it. I readily admit it's not his best or most accomplished work, but it is absolutely essential, as are everything that he wrote in his first 5 or 6 years of publishing. Absolutely essential. But it all started with Carrie, and that's a really special thing. So anyway, big thanks again to Noah Mitchell for sharing the benefit of your knowledge and a bit of your amazing collection. And seriously, the U.S. edition had a very small print run, thousands of copies, and the UK edition, I understand, was 1,000 copies max, and most of those went to libraries. And the book is 50 years old and almost impossible to find in the wild. And I just think it's wonderful that Noah has a copy and that he was willing to share it in that way. But anyway, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your support, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.